And joining me here from Sports Illustrated senior writer, day after the NBA draft and day before everything starts going free agency, Chris Mannix, right here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Chris?
I'm good, Rich. How you doing?
What would be the story? I'm fine, thank you. Better for talking to you. What is the story of draft night, in your estimation, Chris?
Well, more inactivity in terms of consummating deals than I expected. In the days leading up to the draft, there were several teams in the top 10, including Minnesota at number 1, that were shopping their picks. And, some of the activity took place prior to the draft. I mean, there were big moves made by Oklahoma City. There were big moves made by New Orleans that shook up the draft a little bit. But I was a little surprised at the lack of activity inside that top 10. It's tough to declare winners and losers on players that haven't played an NBA minute yet, but I was a little surprised that we didn't see more activity inside that top 10.
Okay, and then the top 5, did anything surprise you there? Or that pretty much went chalk the way that you were expecting?
It went close to chalk. You could have seen some shakeup at that 4-5 slot. Obi Toppin going to the Knicks, I thought he might have gone a little bit higher. The Israeli kid, I thought he might have gone a little bit higher, but nothing shocking. I mean, there are certainly some intriguing, possibilities now. And I think the guys in that top 3 are going to be inextricably linked because there really wasn't a consensus number 1 in this draft. I mean, Anthony Edwards is a very good prospect, but you would find plenty of people across the league that would have taken James Wiseman in that spot. He is an incredible athletic specimen who I think is going to be a really good modern 5 in today's NBA. And LaMelo Ball might have the most upside. I mean, he is a dynamic playmaker. I mean, he's got some problems with defense, his shot, and God knows what his father brings to the table in Charlotte. But, he's the goods as a playmaking point guard. And, for a Charlotte team that badly needs star power, that's a pretty good pickup.
Well, Chris Mannix here on the Rich Eisen Show. And the Wiseman pick, this was supposed to be a crowning moment for all the heartache and pain that Golden State went through last year to earn the second overall pick and then add somebody of this kid's talent, and it is turned out to be Wiseman, to the mix of Steph, Draymond, and Klay. And then earlier in the day, Klay seems to suffer a significant injury to his Achilles. What can you tell me about that and how this all played out with the Warriors yesterday, Chris?
Yeah, he's going to have an MRI today in Southern California that will, speak to what of the significance of the injury. In talking to some people close to the situation, I don't want to say there's pessimism, but there's a sense of dread when it comes to this. It's a lower leg injury, not to the same leg that he had the ACL injury a year ago, but a lower leg injury that, from what I was told, he had difficulty putting pressure on as he walked off the floor. And these are kind of telltale signs, Rich, about something that could be significant. So nothing will be known until after the MRI today, but there is a strong sense of dread in Golden State about the immediate future of Klay Thompson.
Chris Mannix here on the Rich Eisen Show. Then let's get to what went down with the Bucks this week, giving up what they gave up for Holiday, and then Bogdanovich being acquired and then not because he doesn't want to come, and all of this in, I guess, one would say, hopes of making sure Giannis understands they hear him or they're setting the table, or have they gotten some sort of assurance from him? What is going on with the Milwaukee Bucks, Chris?
Well, I think John Horst, the GM there, is doing exactly what you do in this situation. You push all your chips onto the table to show Giannis that your only goal is to make that team championship caliber around him. They get Drew Holiday, who I think is a reasonable upgrade over Eric Bledsoe, who defends at a high level, makes shots. I mean, he might be, I've heard Kevin Durant say this, he might be the best defender at the guard position in the league. So you add a high-level player to the mix. The Bogdanovic situation is weird because I was told yesterday that Bogdanovic does want to play in Milwaukee. I'm not entirely sure why this is playing out the way it is. I mean, there's a theory that, the deal that was constructed might not have met NBA approval. Bogdanovic is a restricted free agent, and there are some, not to get too deep in the weeds, but some salary machinations that were a little bit tricky in putting that deal together. So it could be, Rich, something as simple as Bogdanovic gets to restricted free agency and a new form of the deal is constructed, and that sends Bogdanovic to Milwaukee. And if that happens, it's an A offseason for the Bucks. I mean, I don't know that Giannis definitely signs that Supermax, now that once these deals are constructed, but this sends a powerful message. I mean, Bogdanovic is a very good player. I mean, nobody watches Sacramento Kings games, but this is a guy that can really play. He's a playmaking, shooting, high-level international guard. I mean, he's going to be an immediate upgrade to what they do either with the second unit or in the starting lineup. So I think they've made that team measurably better. And more importantly, that's a team that's measurably better for postseason play. They've got shooters. They've got playmakers. That's something that was sorely lacking in that second-round loss to Miami.
So all these machinations by Milwaukee have been done as a signal? I just find it, hard to believe that they would make all these maneuvers without some assurance from Giannis that if you do A and B, I'm here or I'm already in. You know what I'm saying? Like, what is the status of that, and what is the timing on all of that, Chris?
Look, Giannis, dating back to his meeting with ownership after the Bucks lost in the bubble, has not given them any indication that he wants to play anywhere else. Now, that's not the same as saying I'm ready to sign a Supermax extension with that team, but he has not expressed kind of the Anthony Davis-like desire to go elsewhere. And while I don't think that the Bucks have gotten any assurances from Giannis that he'll sign right now, and look, there may be reason to play this out, into next summer for Giannis, whether it's financial or otherwise. But I think Milwaukee feels, and in fact, I know Milwaukee feels, that if they keep making moves to upgrade this team, Giannis is going to want to stay. I mean, they've done a lot for Giannis in Milwaukee. I mean, they've built that team around him. They added his brother to the team. I mean, that matters to Giannis. I mean, I was in the bubble for a couple of months, Rich, and those two were inseparable in that bubble. In fact, the other brother with the Lakers, they were hanging out the entire time. So that matters to a guy like Giannis. So I think what the Bucks are hoping is that what they've done this offseason tells Giannis that they're built to win right now, and being in Milwaukee will offer him the best chance to win.
Chris Mannix, 2 minutes left with the Sports Illustrated Senior Writer day after the NBA draft, and so 6 p.m. Friday is when the free agency new league year window opens up, correct? That's the next step right now?
Yes, that's that's the next one.
All right, now who's the first to go here? What do we expect just over the horizon now that everything's jam-packed and compacted, drafted?
It's going to be frantic, that's for sure.
Right.
I mean, this has all been wild. It's not the most robust free agent market. Mm-hmm. Next summer is the summer people are targeting largely because there's, at least for now, Giannis is scheduled to be a part of it. And there are a number of teams that are trying to keep their powder dry for that summer so they can have some flexibility, Miami being chief among them. One of the more intriguing players on the market is probably Fred VanVleet from Toronto. I mean, is coming off another great season with the Raptors, won a championship. There will be a market maybe in Detroit or New York for him. The Raptors want to bring him back, but that's a $20 million per year salary that you're talking about. And you've got to be sure that Fred VanVleet is your guy. But he's probably, I would say, the most intriguing name on the free agent market. Everything else, Rich, is tied to the trade market and what exactly the Houston Rockets decide to do in the next few weeks or even few months with James Harden. I mean, that's the guy. I mean, everyone from Brooklyn to maybe even Golden State to some others are going to be angling to be in the James Harden sweepstakes if the Rockets really start to push him on the open market. And, they're the team that could reshape the NBA with some of the deals that they make.
That was my next question, is what's going on there? Because, Harden has said he wants to go to the Nets, according to all reports. And usually what a star player wants, a star player gets, and he's a star player. The Warriors in the mix, is that in response to Klay? Or, I mean, where did that one come from, Chris?
Well, I mean, I'd kind of talked about this a year ago when, the Rockets had, we're kind of, they had plateaued a little bit. The season didn't end with Chris Paul the way they wanted to. And the Warriors because of that draft pick and because they have a very lightly protected first-round pick from Minnesota next year. They're a player for any team that's looking to get a haul of assets. And while they don't have the blue-chip player to offer like, say, a Brooklyn does, if you can get, James Wiseman, who is potentially a superstar, if you can get that draft pick, and you're willing to take on Andrew Wiggins, who, is still a decent player, albeit an overpaid one, they can be in play. And look, one thing that's obvious about James Harden, this is what I tried to tell people a year ago, James Harden is an alpha in Houston, but he's far more concerned about winning at this stage of his career than he is being the scoring champion for the fourth year in a row. I mean, he's accomplished a lot individually, and now as he hits his early 30s, from what I'm always told, he's looking to win. That's why he's willing to go to Brooklyn and sacrifice to play alongside Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. I think he's willing to go other places, like at Golden State, and sacrifice to play alongside star players. He's looking for an opportunity to win, and there's only a handful of teams that can really offer.
What about, lastly, I guess, a team that I mentioned quite a bit at the top of the show because I thought they had a dynamic night, and I love Daryl Morey. I mean, what a night he had last night. What about that idea? I'm reading in Philadelphia Inquirer that Meek Mill is reaching out to Harden to say, why don't you come here? But wouldn't that blow everything up the way that things are kind of set up for Morey? I mean, what about that possibility?
Well, Daryl Morey loves James Harden.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. And Philadelphia is one of the possible destinations for Harden if the Rockets get aggressive, which, to be clear, right now, they're not in any rush, nor should they be. I mean, Harden has 2 guaranteed years left in his contract, a third-year option that's worth like $50 million. So, he's tied into the Rockets one way or the other. So Houston, rightfully, their position right now is, what's the rush? If we do decide to deal James Harden, we want a bidding war. And that bidding war might not materialize until mid-season when teams start to figure out what they are and what they need. And they want some desperate teams out there to make a run at a guy like Harden. Philadelphia's interesting, but Philadelphia, to get Harden, you'd have to throw in Ben Simmons. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
You don't get James Harden without including Ben Simmons. And I'm not saying that's not something the Sixers would do. It certainly, I think, would be something worth considering. But I don't think they're there yet. I don't think they're the strongest team in the hunt for James Harden unless they're willing to put all their chips in with draft picks and young players to go get Harden, because other teams like Brooklyn and like some others are going to be willing to do that.
So I guess with free agency beginning this weekend, we're not expected to see anything Giannis, Harden, or Westbrook related this weekend. That's not on the immediate horizon, essentially.
Well,
what you're saying.
Giannis is unpredictable. We don't know what Giannis is going to do and what Milwaukee's moves mean to him. He's very hard to read on that count. Harden, I would not expect anything to happen. Westbrook, there's just no market for Westbrook, Rich. The Knicks, I mean, they used to be this dumb, but I don't think they're this dumb anymore. I just don't. Look, I've got no sense from talking to people in New York that they're interested, or at least are prioritizing Russell Westbrook at this point. They're trying to rebuild organically. They had a pretty good night in the draft. They're trying to do things in a more methodical, traditional way. Charlotte, I thought, was a possibility before. Westbrook is represented by Jordan Brand. It made some sense for him to play with the Hornets, but I don't get the sense that now that LaMelo Ball is part of the mix, that Russell is going to be on the table there. And after that, unless you're looking to salary dump him, which the Rockets are not, it's tough to find a taker. I mean, Miami's not going to do it because they're, trying to keep their powder dry for 2021. And there's only a limited number of teams able to take on that salary. So it's going to be difficult, to say the least, for the Rockets to trade Russell Westbrook. He is a tough guy to move at this stage of his career.
Yeah, and the Lakers basically just sat back, watched it all play out, and Anthony Davis will just re-sign there, I imagine, and that's the next steps. Obviously they got Schroeder.
I think Davis is a foregone conclusion, I think, at this point. I mean, it would be kind of funny if he kicked the tires on Chicago because he's from there, but I doubt it. I think he's a lock to sign a max level extension. I love the Dennis Schroeder move. I mean, Rob Pelinka's had a hell of a year, with some of the moves he made last year to get that team in position. Now you deal Danny Green for a 27-year-old, top-level guard who is coming off his best NBA season. That was a very good move for the Lakers. They weren't going to get anything of that value with the 28th pick. Green was okay, but obviously struggled some in the playoffs. I think Schroeder makes them better. That's scary for every team out there.
Yeah, and then, of course, Green winds up in Philadelphia by the end of last night with Al Horford and his big, huge contract showing up in Oklahoma City. I mean, it's amazing. It's been a wild week, man. A wild 72 hours. No doubt about that.
Well, I'll tell you this much. Like, Oklahoma City, at some point, we're going to get to, 2025, and we're going to have Oklahoma City and New Orleans, the only teams picking in the draft. They're going to have all the draft picks in that year. But I promise you this, Rich.
Yes.
They'll turn Al Horford into a first-round pick down the line. They will. Again, they have been able to take advantage of desperate teams. Last year the Clippers were desperate. The Rockets needed to move Chris Paul. They were desperate. The Suns needed to make a move for Chris Paul. They were maybe not desperate. They wanted him. So, they'll find a team that wants Al Horford by midseason. They'll get something real back in return. You're
awesome, Chris. Thanks for the time. Appreciate it. I know you're busy last night, busy today. Appreciate the call.
Anytime, Rich.
The man, Chris Mannix, at SI Chris Mannix on both Twitter and Instagram right here on The Rich Eisen Show.